As we step back into the Middle Ages, building the great Gothic cathedrals of Europe became quite the crusade. Construction of these symbols of power and faith began between the 11th and 16th centuries. It wasn't just about assembling beams and stones, it was a blend of architectural innovation and the dedication of medieval workers. From the genius of the master mason to the humble laborer, the very essence of what it meant to be a medieval Christian was captured in the walls of these massive churches, often taking over 50 years to complete. Now they are admired by the crowds of tourists who stare up in awe and wonder how they could have been built without modern engineering techniques and machinery. Let's travel back in time and knock on the colossal doors of some of these magnificent buildings to find out about the men who were involved in their construction. In medieval warfare, it wasn't just about powerful weapons and armor. Tactics, strategy, and teamwork were just as important. You can assemble the most powerful heroes, but without the right strategy they'll fall before a smarter opponent. And the same goes for today's sponsor, Hero Wars. Just like in real medieval battles, every hero has a role. Tanks absorb damage, range fighters attack from a distance, and support heroes heal and strengthen the team. Each hero has unique weapons and artifacts that shape their fighting style. Here, like choosing the right caliber or scope, it can determine the outcome of the battle. But this is where you come in, dear viewer. You see, battles against real players require more than just strong heroes. You need to analyze your opponents, choose the best attack strategy, and manage your resources wisely. If you've already assembled your dream team, I've got some exciting news for you. I'm thrilled to introduce Peach. This is a brand new hero with a dark and mysterious past. Players will embark on a 4-week adventure to uncover the new hero's story and get an exclusive opportunity to be the first to unlock and upgrade a new Guardian, available from February to 16th exclusively for Hero Wars Alliance players. So what are you waiting for? Can you assemble the perfect team, choose the best gear, and outsmart your opponents? Test your skills in battle and find out. Download her rewards from the link in the description or use my QR code and show what you're capable of. And now for today's video, welcome to Medieval Madness. Building a stairway to paradise. From the 11th to the 13th century, there was an extraordinary population growth across Europe, which led to great prosperity, especially in large cities, and particularly those on trading routes. Although there were already many large Romanesque churches, they were far too small for the hundreds of parishioners now needing a place to worship, and there were frequent fires in the timber-building. City leaders wanted tangible symbols of their wealth and status, and so the idea to build colossal cathedrals to the glory of God was born, as well as highly skilled workers. Cathedral construction needed considerable funding, not just from the wealthy citizens, bishops, and clergy, but also from worshippers and pilgrims. One important element in the practice of the medieval Catholic Church was the veneration of saints and the accompanying pilgrimages to the locations where a particular saint's relics were interred and honored. The more popular the saint, then the more donations and benefices a church could hope to receive from their faithful admirers, and for their contribution the worshipper could hope for divine help and a blessing or healing from being near to the physical remains of the holy person. More meant a quicker construction. During the Norman period, Winchester, a monumental cathedral, was built in less than 20 years, but building work often had to stop and start when the money ran out, as was the case with the Gothic Ram in Paris. Their building work began in 1163, but it wasn't until 1270 that the south transept and rose window were finally finished. Better together. Medieval guilds were a fellowship of merchants or craftsmen who came together for protection, mutual support, and to further benefit their professional interests. Each guild was also responsible for setting the regulations and quality standards for their particular industry. The medieval craft guilds were alliances of the artisans of a particular trade. They might be bookbinders, leather workers, bakers, or blacksmiths, or any other skilled industry that involved the process of educating apprentices. Most of these guilds had strict membership requirements. Many medieval towns had a number of family workshops made up of skilled craftsmen. Most were men, although women and girls were involved in skilled crafts such as embroidery, weaving, and tapestry making. However, there were more opportunities for boys when it came to training and apprenticeships. Each craft guild had 3 distinct categories: apprentice, journeyman, and master. The master, a highly skilled individual with years of experience, was particular about who he took on as an apprentice. The boys were usually in their early teens, were given bed, board, and clothing in exchange for their work. The apprenticeship had a fixed term of anywhere between 5 and 9 years. Apprentice carpenters would learn how to read plans and use tools. Once they had completed their apprenticeship, the young man would become a journeyman carpenter and travel from town to gain experience by working on various building projects. Before he could become a master carpenter, the journeyman had to present a masterpiece to the Guild of Carpenters for them to assess. Only when the masterpiece had been approved could the journeyman establish their own workshop and train their own apprentice. Their tools included axes, saws, mallets, planes, squares, and levels, so they had to have an understanding of maths and geometry. Carpenters also needed a knowledge of techniques such as lap, dovetail, and mortise and tenon joints. They were responsible for selecting the appropriate wood for the project. A huge amount of wood was used in cathedral construction for roof trusses, beams, hoist platforms, and scaffolding. At the height of the Gothic building craze in the High and Late Middle Ages, there was a shortage of hardwood trees such as oak and walnut, so softer woods like pine were used for scaffolds. Old scaffolding was even recycled and moved from one building site to another, and reused cranes and pulley mechanisms were used to lift materials to the scaffolding in the higher parts of the building, and put log holes can still be seen carved into the structure of many medieval castles and cathedrals, as well as structural work in the interior of the cathedral. The carpenter became an adept artist working on religious and mythological carvings, elaborately wood-carved choir stalls, panels, ornate pulpits, font covers, and huge doors. All this painstaking work had to be carried out to the specifications of the architectural designs and plans given to them by the master mason. The Gothic superstars masons worked with stone. They produced blocks that could be used in walls or carved columns, archways, and windows. When creating the Gothic cathedrals, a lot of their work was highly decorative. The Guild of Master Masons was particularly influential, well organized, and the most secretive of the medieval guilds. Their skills were often passed on through families from father to son. Many master masons of early Gothic architecture have been forgotten, but later master masons such as Tinth Godwin Gret and Leopold Dudson, who built Westminster Abbey in London for King Edward the Confessor, became well known, as did John de Charles, who worked on the Notre Dame de Paris, and Pierre de Montreal, who was a master at the Basilique Saint-Ed de Manel, who was possibly father to Pierre, was master mason for Louis VI, 11th of France. He advised the king on all architectural matters and built the chapel of the Hôtel Dior, the oldest public hospital in France, and worked on various churches in Paris. Another famous father and son builder combo were the Pera family. The German architect and sculptor R. Pera the Elder was founder of the Pera family of master builders. Peter, his son, who was born in 1325, worked on Prague Cathedral after the first master builder Frenchman Mat thus of Arras died. Peter's son Cel and Johannes continued his work after he too passed away in 1399. The parlor styles spread throughout Europe, and Peter's ideas were even used as far away as Spain during the construction of civil music. Cathedral. Working hard for the money. Building a cathedral took a network of crafts and guilds, but of the 50 to 100 men on site, the majority were stone workers. Stonemasons underwent years of demanding on-the-job training and traveled extensively from building site to gain experience. It was the master mason or builder who was responsible for the design and all aspects of the build. An average mason or carpenter might earn around 122 a year. The laborers were he worst paid and hardest working members on the team. At the opposite end of the spectrum, the master mason became wealthy, often traveling from project to project. Gautier d'Iron-Fry was the master builder of Evo Cathedral, and was given a contract in 1253 that paid him 50 a year. For this he had to agree to never be away from the site for longer than 2 months at a time, after having slept in tent stables and bars. Perhaps on the outskirts of the city, the workers would be led in a procession by the monks while they sang morning prayers. After arriving at the site, they would receive their daily orders and eat a simple breakfast of fruit, bread, and cheese. Every site had a mason's lodge, a hut where they could carry out their indoor work, eat their lunch, and store their tools. The hut needed to be large enough to have a banker, a specific place for any intricate carving to be done. What can look like trivial decorations on a Gothic cathedral were actually done to reinforce weak points, like the Agnate high points in the corners of the building. They add weight to the corners and keep them strong. English masons were known for carving heads that often supported something heavy, and the facial expressions often show the displeasure at this. Hopefully during the 30-minute mid-morning break, which was usually around 9 o'clock or 10 a.m., the master would provide them with a well-earned jug of wine. Working hours were long, especially in the summer, and would have lasted from sunrise to sunset. From around 1 in the afternoon, work would stop for a couple of hours so that the men could eat and nap. At the end of the day, they would be treated to another glass of wine. Living arrangements varied greatly at Strasbourg, France. The masons even had a paid cook. During the building of Sinina Cathedral in Italy, the masons won the right to be given wine from the cathedral vineyards, as having to queue up at the taverns for a well-earned drink was eating into their working hours, and it only took them 30 years to win that right. A quiet place. During the first 40 or 50 years of the Gothic building period, a code of strict silence was imposed on the workers, and anyone caught breaking the rules could be given a fine. Any prayers for the workers' protection that might be offered up by a passing friar were always welcomed, as accidents were a regular occurrence. Skin diseases and burns were common among the masons because they had to handle lime on a regular basis. Gloves were provided by the master, but not always worn at Westminster Abbey. The stonemasons were provided with gloves, winter hoods and boots, and straw hats. In the summer, larger blocks of stone were carved at quarries and transported to the site. Although the heaviest loads were moved using oxen and horse-drawn wagons, a lot of the stones had to be carried by hand. They were carved at ground level before being set in place. Each mason had his own unique symbol, which he would carve into every stone that he worked on this mason's. Mark showed that the piece was finished, meaning that he could be paid at Minster stones have been found that date back to 1154, and the same marks have also been found on local churches, showing that the craftsman traveled around from place to place for work. An accident was reported at Langres Cathedral in northeastern France in 1476. Large loads were brought down on a lowering platform, but smaller stones were thrown down, out and away from the side of the building at an angle. It was only a matter of time before a mason threw down a stone that was just that little bit heavier than the others, and it landed too close to the building, killing a woman who was passing by. The mason was exonerated of all blame. Working at such great heights made the stonemason's job a dangerous profession. One wrong move, and that was it. It was better to be killed outright as well if an accident did happen, because nobody wanted to employ a crippled worker, and most injured workers ended their days begging on the streets. William of S., the master mason who worked on Canterbury Cathedral, was paralyzed in 1178. Sadly, he fell from the scaffolding when he was inspecting the high vaults. The medieval master mason was a completely different animal to the architect that we see today. He wasn't in a design studio, he was on site with the workers getting his hands dirty. However, we shouldn't forget the carpenters, masons, blacksmith, glaziers, carters, carriers, layers, hewers, wallers, marblers, laborers, and even the volunteers who worked for free, driven to do so by their faith. Without then dedication, skill, and knowledge, the construction and preservation of such magnificent medieval buildings with their towering spires, intricate sculptures, and beautiful stained glass windows that still inspire wonder today would not exist. Thank you so much for watching this episode of Medieval Madness. Please do subscribe to the channel if you're enjoying our videos, as we do release a new one every Friday, and your engagement really helps us grow. Until next time, hope everyone has an amazing week. Cheers, guys.